All right, let's welcome in FS1's Danny Parkins. You can catch him Monday through Friday on First Things First. And Danny, you called it. The Patriots did not stand a chance, and we knew it was going to be a defensive battle, but the dominance of the Seahawks defense was an even bigger factor than I expected heading into this game. And a good reminder, I think, of just how far a good defense can take you in the NFL and especially in the postseason. What was your reaction to that game?
Yeah, I didn't think that this was much of a fair fight, which is why I liked Seattle in the game and bet it as such. So it was a blowout and boring to the rest of America. It was very profitable for me, so I thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought that it was pretty clear this year that the two best teams in the NFL were the Seahawks and the Rams. So I said that the NFC Championship game felt like the real Super Bowl. And I think that the rest of the country just didn't fully get on board with Seattle because of questions about Sam Darnold, because of it's like, oh, well, they're in the Pacific Northwest. And, I know Matt Stafford and Sean McVay more, and they won a Super Bowl more recently. But basically everything was pointing to those two teams being the two best teams. And so, I wasn't terribly shocked at the outcome. It was a dominant defensive performance, one of the best defensive performances in Super Bowl history. And I think clearly the correct team won.
Yeah, and I think what Sam Darnold pointed out after the game was true, too, is he didn't need to have his best stuff yesterday because of the way that defense played. And I think you look at Will Campbell, the Patriots left tackle, who allowed 14 pressures, the most in a playoff game since 2018, as Drake Maye was sacked 6 times. And he was someone that the Bears were potentially looking at drafting this past draft. But his short arms were a huge concern. And I think we saw that come into play in this game, especially when you have 2 rookies playing on the left side of that Patriots offensive line. So when you look at this as that as the example, knowing that the Bears are in need of a defensive lineman and a left tackle, does that example make you feel like maybe the left tackle is a higher priority for the Bears now after watching how that played out?
I think it's a reasonable premise. I just would say what it says is that you need to hit on your pick. Like you need to get it right if you are using a premium draft asset. Now the Bears picking at 21 or whatever is not the same as drafting Will Campbell at 4. But like if you have a pick in the top 5 and you miss on that pick at any position, it's devastating because you are so invested in that player, working out for you at a premium. We saw it with the Jaguars this year. They traded up to draft Travis Hunter at 2, said, we're going to play you at corner and receiver. He ends up not being good at either and then gets hurt. Like Will Campbell, maybe his future in the NFL is as a left guard, but how long are they going to keep the experiment going with him at left tackle to try to justify the draft position? So, whether the Bears go D end, D tackle, or left tackle with their first round pick, the key is on hitting on the pick, because any player that you draft in the first round who ends up being good is a steal relative to what you're paying him because of how the new rookie wage scale works, and it's not even that new anymore. But so, I'm not trying to dodge your question or your point because it's a good one, but the key really is just getting it right, not necessarily on like drafting for position.
I feel like a lot of people felt going into that game like, oh, if there was a redraft, I remember we talked about this last week, the Bears would have taken Drake Maye #1 overall because he finished second in MVP voting. But I look at that game and I think Caleb would have performed much better against that Seahawks defense. And we saw Drake Maye, and his shoulder might have been hurt. We don't know what he was feeling in that game. But I looked at it as like Caleb was set up for that game, and I thought he would have performed well in it.
Yeah, I felt the same way. I agree. Like, I think, listen, I said to you last time that I still would take Caleb because I think his ceiling is higher than Drake Maye, but I don't think it's at all disrespectful for people to have Drake Maye ahead of Caleb. Like, he finished second in the MVP voting this year, and he deserved it. He was spectacular, and it's a regular season award. But you can't tell me that Caleb's escapability and improvisational ability would not have been more useful. And this is purely anecdotal, but I do the show with Kevin Wildes, who's a diehard Patriots fan, and he texted me late in the fourth quarter. He was like, "Hey Danny, I'll admit it. This is when I want Drake Maye to turn into Caleb Williams," because like the Patriots obviously needed the late comeback, which is what Caleb had become famous for. So that I think we're far from determining who the best quarterback is going to be in that draft class between Jaden, Bo Nix will have something to say about it, Drake Maye, and obviously Caleb Williams.
What else do you take away from the way this Seattle team was built that you think the Bears can learn from, as it is a copycat league? The one thing that I think stood out more, too, is just the importance of special teams and how they were such a complete team in all three phases.
Listen, their special teams was arguably the best in the NFL this year. I agree with you, but I'll just run through this here. These are draft picks for the Seattle Seahawks since the 2022 draft. 4 of their 5 starters on the offensive line were drafted in the last 4 drafts. Jackson Smith and Jigba, Offensive Player of the Year. Devin Witherspoon, who could have been the MVP of that game, top 5 pick out of Illinois, spectacular all-pro corner. Kenneth Walker, who had 161 yards from scrimmage. Derek Hall, who had 2 sacks. Byron Murphy, who had 2 sacks. A.J. Barner, who had 4 catches and a touchdown. And Nick Emenwari, who's, the Swiss Army knife of their defense, who had 5 tackles in the game and was spectacular. So the key to building a team is drafting, right? They obviously signed DeMarcus Lawrence. They signed Sam Darnold. They knocked it out of the park with Mike McDonald, a play-calling head coach who's young, like the Bears have, as a play-calling head coach who's young. Obviously, McDonald, defensive side of the ball, Ben Johnson, offensive. But the key to sustained success in the NFL is hitting on your draft picks. And again, like that goes back to your first point about D-end or left tackle. Like Gray Zabel was their first-round pick this year. He's a guard. But is that a premium position? No. But is he excellent? Like he's probably worth $20 to $25 million a year, and they're paying him on a first-round salary. Like that's tremendous value for an elite player who made a huge difference for them. So John Schneider, the GM of the Seahawks, is on a ridiculous heater right now as a drafter. And that's probably the biggest thing that everyone will try to copy.
Well, you could probably argue that he's been on one because the last time they went to the Super Bowl, it was with an entirely different roster, and that's why he was the GM of the year. You talked about the Seahawks and the Rams, the 2 best teams in the NFL this year. They still have the best odds to win the Super Bowl next year if you're looking at any futures bets right now. 5th best odds go to the Bills out of the AFC. Do you think the Patriots have a chance of making it back next year? We talked about them being ahead of schedule this year, but watching what happened, do you feel like first place schedule that they're going to play next year, they can make it back?
Yeah, they definitely can make it back. I mean, listen, they're going to be a prime regression candidate, and so are the Bears. And there's a ton of turnover every year. But if I was making the Patriots case in terms of optimism, it's pretty simple. Like you had a 23-year-old quarterback, and you still have top 5 cap position in the NFL, and you made it to the Super Bowl. Like that's not supposed to happen. Like I think it's totally reasonable to say that the best Patriots team that Drake Maye plays on is still in front of him, and that next year's team on paper should be better than this year's team. But that doesn't guarantee anything. Like you would have said the same thing about Jaden Daniels last year. Joe Burrow hasn't been back to a Super Bowl. Dan Marino never made it back to a Super Bowl. So like there's no guarantees here, and they're not going to surprise anyone. They'll play a tougher schedule. All of those things are true, but the Patriots should be able to add significant talent this offseason, so they definitely can be back.
The Bears have the 15th best odds, according to Fox Sports. I was having this conversation with someone yesterday because it was the whole topic of Sam Darnold being the first quarterback from that really stacked draft class to make it to the Super Bowl. And do you think when all the careers are over, does Josh Allen win a Super Bowl, or will he be the only one to do so out of that 2018 class?
Yeah, I still feel like it's inevitable that Josh Allen is going to win a Super Bowl. I think he's spectacular. I think he's probably the best football player alive. Obviously, Mahomes is the most accomplished, but like right now, today, who's the best player in the NFL? I'd give the title to Josh Allen. So I do think he will ultimately win a Super Bowl. But your point is a good one. It's hard. Like if I had to bet on which one of those guys is not going to do, I'd bet that Lamar doesn't, because I'm not sure how much his talent will age well once his athleticism continues to wane. I think he's got a few more elite years, but I just think Josh Allen's going to have a longer prime than Lamar Jackson. But that's kind of in the AFC, just AFC alone, you've got Mahomes, you have Allen, you have Lamar, you have Burrow. Now you've got Drake Maye, you've got Justin Herbert. Trevor Lawrence was a top 5 finisher for MVP this season. Like it's a it's very, very difficult to win one. So yeah, there's definitely going to be a few guys that, someone has to be Phillip Rivers out of this era of quarterbacks, and we'll see who it ends up being.
All right, well, you talked about Lamar Jackson. He's going to be working with Declan Doyle as he takes the offensive coordinator position in Baltimore. Ben Johnson staying in-house to replace him, going with passing game coordinator Press Taylor, who was an OC before in Jacksonville for 3 years. Do you like staying in-house, or did you think Ben Johnson was going to go pull from somewhere else because he has had a history of, quote-unquote, not hiring his friends?
Yeah, it's an interesting point. I guess I'm not surprised. I don't have a strong opinion on it either way. Like, I think we all have to kind of still be in the, like, in Ben Johnson we trust mantra right here. And I get not wanting to shake it up more than necessary. And I also think there's, like, a lot of value in promoting from within when you can, because, like, you want Ty to go to continuity just for your players' benefit, for retaining coaches for an extra year, all of that sort of thing. So, being the offensive coordinator under Ben Johnson is not a great, it's a nice title because you're an offensive coordinator. And you maybe get to do a few extra things in some meetings, but you're not the play caller, and you're not going to get a lot of credit. And based on what I've heard about what Ben Johnson does in terms of, like, installs and the attention to detail and all the work, like, he's also doing the vast majority of that because he's a little bit of a crazy person. And so, it's a bump in title, but it's not necessarily going to be that much more responsibility. And so, I totally understand why Ben Johnson went in-house.
All right, one of the fun things about the Super Bowl is Radio Row, and for the first time we heard from DJ Moore since the season ended against the Rams, and Caleb threw that interception. And then we heard about NFL Honors take the moment of the year speech, acceptance speech. But listen to what he had to say about that final play and his future in Chicago.
Last play has come up in conversation a lot. Take us through it. Your side of the story, please.
My side of the story is just like everybody else's. It's just miscommunication. We got to attack it the next time we got something like that and just go from there.
What do you think's ahead for the Bears?
I hope not a lot more fourth quarter comeback wins, but a lot more wins that come with Ben and just keep stressing ourselves to be better than we were this year.
How much would you like to be a part of that, to stay here?
I would love to. Like I told him in our exit meeting, I love being here. I really didn't have no expectations for this year. Everything went out the window when we got Ben, and I just was all in on the team.
So I think when DJ Moore accepted the moment of the year, in his speech, he said, we're going to wreak havoc on the league next year. But I think the question still remains, is DJ Moore going to be a Chicago Bear at the start of next season?
Yeah, it's a good question. And, shout out to CHGO for sending, media there to get the answers that people want. So that was good stuff. I would say, my gut tells me it still is a little difficult for them to completely overhaul their defense and keep DJ Moore at his number next year. But you can always rework contracts. And probably the safest bet is on the status quo and on him returning. Like, DJ Moore is still a good player, even if he isn't a perfect fit in what they're trying to do here. And some other guys had a little bit more consistent chemistry with Caleb Williams. So, my gut tells me that he's gone or there's something drastic that happens to his contract. I'm not totally satisfied with the answer on that last play of just miscommunication and we have to attack it harder. Like,
What do you want him to say? What do you want him to say?
No, that's the thing. Like, I just don't think it's 100% truthful. Like, I don't think it was just a miscommunication with who? Like, a miscommunication with him and Caleb, or a miscommunication of, like, he didn't understand his assignment against that coverage. Like, I just don't think that's actually what happened on that last play. And I think everybody's just being a good soldier, which is fine. That's what they're supposed to do. Maybe we'll get the full story years from now. But I don't fully believe that that's how it went down, and it's a tough look. But, there are way worse things than having DJ Moore on the Bears next year. He still is a very good player.
Agreed. And we know that he elevates everyone else around him because of his toughness. So everyone's like, all right, well, DJ's hurt. I might as well go be out on the field as well. The fun thing is Seattle's going to open the 2026 season at home in a Thursday night game, and the Bears are one of their possible opponents. They could open up the season against the Super Bowl champs. Danny Parkins, we appreciate your time.
Doesn't that feel inevitable? It feels inevitable that the Bears are going to be in that game. I've already written that one in.
Well, I feel like you look at their schedule, they're going to have basically all primetime games. Number 3 market, coming off a winning season, like, it's destined to happen.
Yeah, which, hey, Show business. Finally, the Bears actually deserving to be on national TV because of the quality of the football team and the offense, and not just because there's a lot of Bears fans. It's a nice change.